True solo death sentence 1 down is probably the hardest challenge you can take on in Payday 2. Thought the bartender was back from his break. Where was he at? What are we doing? But by the end of this video, I think you'll have the confidence to give it a try, because I believe that anyone can play solo Death Sentence 1 down. Before we go any further, Death Sentence 1 down is Payday 2's hardest difficulty, characterized by enemies dealing high levels of damage and having exceptional health. You're allowed 1 down before you go into custody, meaning you need to manage your health bar effectively to prevent a swift defeat. Holy crap. Your strategy needs to be rock solid, and your gameplay needs to be locked in to even have a chance to succeed. Now what we're talking about today is the true solo experience, which I recently took on as part of a series where I'm playing Payday 2 on the hardest difficulty without using any DLC. There's going to be a full video coming out later, but while I work on that, I wanted to talk about my learning process for this one. Subscribe to my channel to see that soon, and like this video if you enjoy it. Anyway, the solo Death Sentence 1 down playstyle is unlike any other way that I've played Payday 2, so I'm here to talk about my experience learning it, and hopefully teach you guys what I've learned from about a week of studying. Also, it's a lot of work to say Death Sentence 1 down every time, so for the sake of my voice and for your ears, we're calling it DSOD for the rest of the video. When you walk away from here, I want you to have a base level of understanding about the true solo experience, and know where to start your own journey. Just know that true solo DSOD is quite the adventure to take on. If you're comfortable with this undertaking, get ready to talk about how and what I learned on my true solo journey through Payday 2's toughest difficulty. Let's have a quick recap. What is true solo DSOD in Payday 2? From what I can tell, rules differ depending on the person, but I think I have a general definition. The 3 rules I use for my true solo DSOD runs on Payday 2 are simply 1. No crew AI, 2. No human players besides yourself, and 3. This one's kind of up to you, but I don't use jokers, aka converted cops. The goal of true solo is simple. Just complete a heist with these limitations, which sounds really easy on paper until you remember that your health bar disappears in a few shots, and 1 cop can mean the difference between success and a life behind bars. There was 1 guy hovering off of the roof! It's pretty simple and sounds exactly as it is though. And now that we've established what true solo DSOD is in Payday 2, let's talk about how I tackled learning this challenge. Tiny disclaimer. You may learn differently than I do. This is just how I learned to play, but something else might work better for you. And now, a question. Have you ever played the same map for 10 straight hours? Because it turns out you learn a lot about that map when you do that. The map in question is Counterfeit, which I took as a suggestion from a high-level player in my community. I believe this heist was actually one of the best places to start now that I've gone through it as a solo player, but I'll get more into that in a minute. Moving on, I also chose not to use the absolute top-tier perk decks like Hacker and Stoic, instead using a strong but not quite overpowered one in my opinion. I chose Armorer because I think it exemplifies the way you should play a game like Payday 2, especially on the hardest difficulty. That being, it relies on getting to cover shortly after your armor breaks, but gives you a short 2-second grace period when you do lose your armor. You can use this 2-second grace period to your advantage to survive situations you wouldn't otherwise, or you can use it to push an objective you wouldn't normally complete. Next, I took general tips from my community, which is what you're doing right now. Basically, learn how to improve yourself by watching or listening to others who have played solo DSOD before. Advice can go a pretty long way, especially if you take it to heart and create your own strategy from it. That's the core of how I learned to play alone. Now, I mentioned playing Counterfeit for 10 hours. I started with a map that's a little more difficult to push myself right out the gate. I would say Counterfeit is a mid-tier map as far as difficulty goes. It requires you to move between 2 locations often, has open areas that you have to cross for objectives, and has a randomly selected escape route to keep you on your toes. It also has snipers in a lot of locations that can see you in a lot of sightlines, which are the ultimate run killer. All these concepts help teach things like push timing, map knowledge, and enemy spawn memorization, which are all important. And the final learning point I gave myself was this. I tried to push my limits. I went for objectives I wouldn't have normally done, I was more aggressive than normal, and I tried new strategies until one worked. The only way I learned was by failing, and trying something new, and that streamlined the learning process for me a lot. All of these ideas were crucial to my learning process, so take a few of them at a time and try them out. You'll be surprised how quickly you'll pick up on smaller things like safe routes to objectives. With all that in mind, I want to move to my next point, which is a list of the most important tips that I learned. These should hopefully teach you some basic strategies to help work on your fundamentals. Now, tip number 1. Learning to kite. Kiting is the idea of running away from fights and taking them on your own terms. Like a kite on a string, you pull enemies and fight them where you want, not the other way around. I would say kiting is easily the biggest thing I've learned from solo DSOD. Moving around the map is important, otherwise you'll be overrun by too many enemies at once. You have to reload eventually, and when you do, someone will be there to finish you off. Kiting enemies around allows you to pick off smaller numbers at a time and manage your resources more effectively. One thing I noticed is that stamina is actually a very important resource, since I had to keep on my toes and run away from some fights if I was being overwhelmed. That's why I think kiting is one of the most important things you can learn. Tip number 2. patience is key. I was constantly my own worst enemy by rushing things. I think at least half of my losses were because I became impatient and tried to go too fast, resulting in me running into too many enemies or pushing an objective when I shouldn't have. This was especially noticeable when I had kited some enemies to one side of the map, crossed to the opposite side to go get an objective done, and then came back to where I kited all the enemies earlier.
Oh, where did you gentlemen come from?
Another part of patience is timing your reloads. Moving and stopping at cover and taking fights at the right pace are all part of being patient. If you're not patient, you can't play true solo DSOD. Now this next tip is a lot more technical, but tip number 3 is understand fade, drama, and the control phases. And when I say that, I'm talking about that assault banner in the top right. So I'm not an expert on this one yet, but it really comes down to feeling more than anything else. You need to be able to tell when the cops are about to take an assault break and start pushing back on them. If you control the fade and the drama, you get valuable time alone to work on objectives. Counterfeit helped me learn a lot about this because of the hose and water valve objectives. I had to be ready to move outside and get things done while the cops were regrouping and I had control. This is probably the most technical meta tip that I have for you. It requires a deeper understanding of how Payday 2 works at its core, but it's something you can easily get a feel for once you're looking out for it. Basically, you don't need to know the specifics, you just have to go based on the vibes. Because I still can't tell you exactly how fade and drama work, but I can show you. Next up we have tip number 4. Know your build and your limits. 2 seconds of invulnerability on Armorer means I can push objectives while my armor is gone if I time it right, for example. Every perk deck is going to be different, but this is a surefire tip for any challenge in Payday 2. I don't have much more to say here besides know what your skills do, know what your options are, because sometimes you only have a second or two to decide how to take out that bulldozer or wipe out that group of enemies. Knowing your limits is an important piece of knowledge to help you make smart decisions. This one's another meta one. Tip number 5 is to understand how janky Payday 2 can be. Cops can get stuck where you don't expect them, shields can push you out of cover, and manholes can lock your character in place like they did to me.
I can't move. That was weird. That was wacky. I couldn't move. I was like bouncing around all over the place.
If you go into a situation knowing that something can break and go wrong, you'll make smarter decisions. This also helps your mental stack a lot. Losing a run because you checked a sniper spawn, turned your back, then died to that sniper instantly spawning and murking you hurts a lot less when you can just accept Payday 2 does some wacky things. We'll talk about mentality a little more in a moment. My final tip for this section, there's a solution to almost everything. If you died, most of the time it's because you made a mistake or used a strategy that didn't work. That's totally normal. You're learning. Failure is the best teacher. Solo DSOD is going to force you to branch out and try things you wouldn't normally do. But that's what makes you a better player. Knowing the right tool for every job comes with time and knowledge. So just keep throwing yourself at the heist until you win. That's all the tips that I had. Let's talk about a few more thoughts I have about true solo DSOD. Then you can hit like and subscribe and be on your way. So for some additional thoughts here, you need to learn to accept failure, because it happens more often than success by a lot. Like I said a moment ago, it's the only way you can learn. So get out there, fail a lot, and fail really hard. It will make you better eventually. And for those of us that are not extremely good at Payday 2 right out the gate, this is where that time commitment comes in. Dedication will overcome the fact that you don't have as much skill. So some of you will take much more failing before you succeed, whereas others will take much less. That's just how it goes. As well, sometimes it's more about knowing the map than being a good player. I think good strategy is important, but knowing sightlines and key spots you can be shot from can be the difference between success and failure. I think I'm a decent player by now. But swapping maps after 10 hours of playing Counterfeit, I got my PP pushed inwards quickly. Gaining map knowledge is just as important as having a good strategy. This one's pretty ball busting. It's not over until it's over. I did plenty of tripping at the finish line, losing to one simple mistake. However, this does go both ways. Sometimes you think you're on death's door, then you walk away from a fight the victor. The run only ends when you see live action Dallas getting busted. So don't forget that. Last one, and maybe even the most important one. Take breaks. I played in 3 to 4 hour sessions with up to a few days in between. Take that time to reflect on what you learned, accept that 95% of those losses were your fault, and keep cool. Things like music help, and having people to chat with can go a long way as well. Keep your mental high and happy, otherwise you're going to be suffering and not have any fun doing this. And at the end of the day, you're supposed to be having fun. But that's it for me today. In conclusion, I think anyone can play solo DSOD on Payday 2. This is definitely the hardest challenge I've taken on in Payday 2, but it's doable with hard work and dedication. It just takes time to see results if you're new to playing solo like I was. Undertaking this challenge is incredibly rewarding. That dopamine hit when you finally finish a level is unlike anything that I've experienced in Payday 2 before. And that's why I want to educate people on starting true solo runs. The highs are really high, and the lows are really low, but that's what makes it really fun and satisfying. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you learned something, and tell me about your experience doing true solo solo runs in the comments if you decide to start them up now. I'm currently working on more true solo runs as I record this video, so if you want to see them live, you can go ahead and check out my Twitch channel. All the footage you saw in today's video is from my Twitch channel, and that's it. I don't really know how to end these things yet, so get out there and start losing over and over again until you win like I did. Okay, bye, thanks.